As the West ramps up pressure on Russia over its military action in Ukraine, Moscow has now used its veto power to reject a UN Security Council draft resolution that sought to condemn the Russian invasion. With no surprise, Russia has vetoed the UN resolution that deplores in the strongest terms the country's aggression against Ukraine. 11 of the Council's 15 members voted in favor of the motion that was co-written by the United States and Albania. China, India and the UAE, meanwhile, abstained from the vote. Russia has defended the invasion of Ukraine at the Security Council. It has also defended its move to use the veto power by describing the UN draft resolution as completely anti-Russia.
Проголосовала против представленного нам сегодня антироссийского и антиукраинского проекта резолюции Совета Безопасности. Почему антироссийского, думаю, объяснять не надо. Достаточно хотя бы бегло на него взглянуть. Почему антиукраинского? Потому что этот документ, вне всякого сомнения, противоречит коренным интересам украинского народа, поскольку пытается спасти и закрепить на Украине ту систему власти, которая подвела эту страну к трагедии, длящейся вот уже как минимум 8 лет.
Now, Russia, which currently holds the rotating Security Council presidency, will likely face another vote on a similar resolution. The draft resolution is now expected to be taken up by the 193-member UN General Assembly. China's abstention comes just weeks after Beijing and Moscow declared a no-limits partnership, backing each other over the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and also in Taiwan. China issued a statement that Beijing understands Russia's security concerns with regards to the Ukraine conflict.
各国的主权和领土完整都应当得到尊重和维护。联合国宪章宗旨和原则也都应当得到共同维护。这是中方一贯秉持的原则，也是各国都应该坚持的国际关系基本准则。同时，我们也看到，乌克兰问题有其复杂和特殊的历史经纬，理解俄方在安全问题上的合理关切。中方主张应彻底摒弃冷战思维，通过对话谈判，最终形成均衡、有效、可持续的欧洲安全机制。
The crucial vote comes at a time when Russian forces are steadily advancing towards the Ukrainian capital to topple Zelensky government. Ukraine's ambassador to the United Nations, meanwhile, rallied against Russia at the UNSC meet, calling the Russian invasion Nazi-style course of action. Ukrainian envoy also accused Russia of not standing true to their initial words of troop withdrawal.
We just heard something that the Russian ambassador wanted to present as assurances from himself and from his leadership that it's all provocation. And that he urged us not to yield to provocations. Do you remember how many times he said that, and his deputies said in this very room that there will be no invasion, no attacks? Do you remember how, during the previous session, he was walking out of the chamber, trying to call someone, not knowing what was going on? How we can trust you? How we can trust your assurance? You have no idea what is on the mind of your president. Your words have less value than a hole in the New York pretzel.
Following the vote, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield slammed Russia's decision to veto the resolution. She said that Russia can reject the UNSC's decisions but cannot suppress its voice. India has also abstained from voting at the UNSC. But the reasons are very different from the reasons that China has put forward. India has made itself clear that by this abstention, India will have the option of now reaching out to relevant sides in order to diffuse the tensions. And for more insight on this, Harshvi Pant, Distinguished Fellow and Head of Observer Research Foundation's Strategic Studies Program, is joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Pant. With Russia exercising its veto, draft resolution condemning Russian aggression and calling for the country's withdrawal from Ukraine failed to pass the United Nations Security Council. India, as we know, abstained. What can you tell us about this?
Well, in some ways, the fate of the resolution was sealed by the very fact that it was being brought against Russia, and we know how the UN Security Council works. The resolution itself would never have passed, and that I think everyone knew very clearly from the very beginning. But I think India's abstention, is based on a very specific set of issues that India managed to raise at the UN Security Council and has been consistently raising at the UN Security Council. It goes to the heart of the matter that ultimately all the stakeholders in this conflict will have to find a diplomatic resolution. And if India, for example, had voted against Russia in the sense saying that, look, we deplore in the strongest possible terms Russian aggression against Ukraine, then that would have meant that India in no way possible could have reached out to Russia in the way it has been trying to. So what we see, for example, in the last 48 hours, you have had Indian Prime Minister being one of the few global leaders to reach out to Mr. Putin and specifically say that cessation of violence has to be the priority. So, and which I think not many countries in the world have that kind of authority at the moment. So I think India's approach is de-escalation and trying to make sure that all stakeholders, including Russia, try to cease hostilities before anything else can happen. And that is very important. We can condemn Russia at the UN Security Council, but that would make no difference on the ground reality where Russian troops are moving fast and furious. There is a lot of blood and destruction happening on the ground. And the first priority of the international community should be to stop that from happening. Right. So I think that is very important.
Right, Mr. Pant, that is the explanation that has been put forward. Now, India's priority right now is to also ensure the safety of the Indian nationals, mainly students in Ukraine. How do you assess the efforts on that front?
Well, I think that is the second priority, not the second order, but second priority, which has been specified, for example, in India's statement at the UN Security Council, as well as Prime Minister Modi's outreach to Mr. Putin. This was the second thing that Prime Minister said when he said that, look, not only cessation of hostilities should be a priority, but also India would like to ensure that its citizens are safe and secure. And I think that is what we have seen over the last 24 to 48 hours, India working towards, and not only with regard to reaching out to Russia, but also reaching out to the neighboring countries of Ukraine to ensure that Indian students, Indian citizens are evacuated safely and they are taken to a place where they can feel safe and secure. And I think that's quite a evacuation process that India is conducting at the moment. Right. Some people are leaving through the ground and some through the air. And this is in line with what others are trying to do, but less successfully, I would add.
All right. And also, just for more clarity on this, how do you assess the impact of further escalation in this conflict on India?
Well, at a number of levels. One, of course, is if the hostilities continue to rise, the evacuation of Indian citizens becomes even more difficult. So while at the moment evacuation is happening gradually but surely, I think if hostilities continue to rise and if the bloodshed and destruction continues, then I think it would be very difficult to save a lot of our citizens from the trauma that they are going through at the moment. The other important aspect is global economy. Global economy, which was which had been coming out of recession, COVID-19, just beginning to see some blooming of global economic scenario. We are now back to square one with high prices of fuel, with high prices of energy, with high prices of food. So I think the challenge now is how do you make sure that this conflict remains confined, that that de-escalation happens rapidly, and that countries go back to doing what they are supposed to do, that is building back their economies, which with one stroke Russia has ensured that we have gone back years. So I think there are these priorities, plus the priority for India being that that global order that is changing so rapidly, where global contestation has been rising in any case. With this conflict, I think Russia has ensured that between West and Russia and China, the contestation is even going to be stronger, and that would make India's life, like many other countries' life, more difficult.
All right. Mr. Harshripan, thank you so much for joining us with your analysis of this situation. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.